The Japanese word tenno means heavenly ruler. With this name, the Japanese people address their emperor. That is the oldest institution in Japan today. We are located in the outside Emperor's Royal Palace Garden, property of the 125th in line Japanese Emperor Akihito. Japan is a country where past and future collide all the time, but the Japanese would not have been what they are if they had not protected and honored their tradition in such an envious manner, a tradition in which the highest and most honorary place belongs to the emperor who, although he does not play an important role in political life, for the Japanese people he is a symbol of pride and spirit. This is the reason they call him Heavenly Ruler. The Japanese monarchy, the oldest in the world, originates from the 6th century. The contemporary era of the Japanese monarchy starts with the restoration of the Emperor Meiji. Having eliminated the power of the shoguns, he was the first to allow merchants and Western missionaries to sail into Japanese ports. During his pragmatic and reforming government, he announced the first ever constitution. The capitulation of Japan and the occupation of the Allied forces contributed to the occurrence of basic changes in the monarchical institution itself. The pressure was so great that even Emperor Hirohito in 1946 was forced to make a statement that even he himself was not divine, but merely an ordinary man. Today, the Japanese heavenly ruler, Akihito, plays no significant role in the political life and in governing the country. The obligations of this sovereign, partially educated in the West, primarily are limited to ceremonies and opening of different sports events. Having inherited the throne from his father Hirohito, this lover of ichthyology, sports, and music has acquired the title Heisei, meaning peacemaker. The only part of the royal palace open for the public is the outside garden. This park is full of pine trees that, according to Japanese symbolism, stand for long life and prosperity. Very rarely one misses the opportunity to visit the Kokyo Ghayen Park. Even though deprived from the possibility of enjoying the interior of the palace through the outside bridges, Nijubashi, and the changing of the guards in front of the main entrance of the palace, tourists try their best to experience the rich and famous history of this country, if only for a moment. The capital of the Japanese emperors, however, was not always Tokyo. They had come to Tokyo for the first time in 1868, when Emperor Meiji relocated the throne from the town of Kyoto to the fortress of Edo, the ancient name of today's Tokyo. The ancient town of Kyoto, founded in the beginning of the 7th century, in the period from 794 to 1868, was the main administrative, political, military, and religious center in Japan. In this town of 37 universities and 24 museums, more than 20% of the Japanese cultural monuments today have some national value. The new religion in Japan, however, could not remain immune to the internal affairs. Nevertheless, even today Buddhism is quite expanded in this country, opposed to the old beliefs such as Shintoism, which is considered to be religion number 2 in Japan. Shintoism is a religion according to which supernatural powers can manifest themselves in other things such as mountains, trees, and other living beings. It was closely connected to the emperors and their families, and the main object of worship was the cult of the emperor. Consequently, after the Pacific War, Shintoism lost its status as a state religion, and today its preaching has more or less an individual characteristic. There is a great deal of Shinto temples in Kyoto. The most conspicuous feature is the main gate with its unique form and red color that dominates in all the surrounding objects. These are the two elements which distinguish the Shintoist and the Buddhist temples. The scriptures represent names of actors and artists that come to this temple during the year and perform their artistic acts. The third week in the month of May is the time when Mifune Matsuri, festival of the vessel of the Kuromazaki temple, is organized in Kyoto. Having carried out the rituals of the temple, the procession continues towards the river Oi. The festival reminds us of a period more than 1,000 years ago when the citizens of Kyoto, the high statesmen and the elite of the royal court, gathered together to enjoy the beauty of the nature. The chronicles from that time illustrate how the emperors and their guests used to spend the whole day sailing on the river Oi, accompanied by the tunes of light music and verses of Chinese and Japanese poetry. Sounds were coming from the vessel as if they were trying to say that the ancient rituals would always be an inseparable part of the rich cultural mosaic of this nation. Not only do the Japanese try to revive the ceremonies and rituals of their ancestors, but they also invest in the preservation of the uniqueness of their cultural heritage. In Kyoto, we visited a school of the traditional Japanese architecture. There were students of different age, and some were from Tokyo. This is what Mr. Katsuji Miyashita told us about his school and its objectives.
大体日本の国には森林がたくさんあります。森林がたくさん。それで木がある。
Traditionally, raw materials for the Japanese architecture are gathered from the forests. This tradition goes on even today. In Kyoto, there are many examples of classical Japanese architecture. My duty is to pass this on to future generations, and that is why I do this with my students. The main components of Japanese buildings are the wood and Japanese paper, bearing in mind the changing of the 4 seasons.
そういうことから教育しているわけでございます。で、日本の木の文化、そしてまた土の文化、壁の文化、土壁の文化、それから和紙、日本で和紙がたくさん使われている。襖とか唐紙とか、そういうようなものも日本独特の住宅の形成をしておって、そして何て言うんですか、日本には四季があって、日本人は世界で最高の生活をしているわけですね。
Now we combine Japanese elements from the West. For example, we use chairs and tables. The Japanese house nowadays is a combination of domestic and foreign culture.
そして日本人はまた畳の文化で、畳の上でゴロンと寝転んで、外国ではそういうことはされないけれども、しかし日本にはそういうことが日本の住宅に取り入れられておりますよね。ですから和風な住宅に住んで洋風、外国から取り入れたそういう文化も利用させてもらっている。
Indeed, Japan today is an intersection of Western and Eastern culture. This was made obvious each step of the way, but we also noticed that, opposed to all the great achievements, ordinary Japanese face difficulties, or they do not want to forsake their own tradition. This tradition is best preserved in the Japanese family. Prefecture Yamanashi region that spreads in the foothills of the symbol of Japanese persistence and dignity, the magnificent Fuji Mountain. When the Japanese mention this mountain, they do it with a great deal of pride, accompanied by the feeling of tremendous love for their ancestors. By banging into the metal pot, the room was filled with tunes that, according to Buddhism, awaken the ancestors. This custom takes place every day, in the morning and at night. Watanabe has a two-story house with typical Japanese interior, modest and laid in rugs. The edicts on the walls were written by a shogun who allowed the expansion of Buddhism in Japan. Of course, the pictures of the ancestors and the great-great-ancestors were also there, and according to Watanabe, they have been part of his family that will never be forgotten. Japanese houses are part of a compound and harmonious structure, and they are built in accordance with climate conditions and weather changes. Wood and bamboo are the two main materials used in building, and therefore the construction is resistant to the frequent earthquakes. The entrance room is the main element in all the houses, and it occupies a relatively big space. It is very functional, not only for the rooms inside the house, but also for maintaining the entity of the house together with the garden that the Japanese treat as part of the house itself. Great attention is invested in the yard and the garden, and they are part of the Japanese tradition that goes back to the time of Muromachi. In the history of this country, his time is remembered as the golden era of Japanese gardens. The ideals of Buddhism and Shintoism have had great influence in the keeping of these yards and gardens. Apart from the trees, plants and flowers that are characteristic of this region, nearly in every garden we can find the presence of stone elements. This unusual combination of stone and wood symbolizes the synthesis of the living and the dead, the Buddhist philosophy of life and death. Love towards nature in Japan is manifested through many different forms and ways. This particular love towards nature is expressed through an art that incorporates a whole philosophy inherited from the ancestors, which enables the foreigner to understand and comprehend this limitless universal art with ease. The Japanese call it bonsai. Bonsai is a traditional Japanese form of art, its objective being growing plants, fruits, and trees, but in much smaller dimensions than the ones found in nature. The intention of the art is for man to be able to enjoy the life of the plant, its growth, its blossoming, and its fruits. The Japanese manifested this desire by creating the art of bonsai. The word bonsai means growing plants in pots. However, bonsai is something more than just that. Bonsai is an attempt to present nature by means of one and only plant. In order to get closely acquainted with this magical Japanese art, we visited the house of the master of bonsai, Mr. Shinichi Nakajima in Tokyo. This was a very small place full of numerous living entities which, even though alive, did not change their form. The goal is to determine the growth of the tree and to develop a dialogue with it, said Mr. Nakajima, because only then can we understand its soul. Flowers in a vase are beautiful as well, but their beauty lasts a short while. Bonsai enables something different. Should you grow it well, you shall have it forever. You shall create harmony with it, and you shall predict its future. Just for a moment, said Mr. Nakajima, I have the impression that I penetrate the inside and the heart of the tree, and that I can communicate with nature. The best thing about bonsai is that everyone can worship nature, even those living in urban environments, where contacts with nature are very rare. Bonsai is described as the gate to enter the world of nature. We would just like to add the gate to the universe. Now, how is bonsai done? The goal is to make the tree or the fruit not grow and to keep it small. If not, the bunches will grow up to 30 centimeters a year, and if we do not cut the young sprouts, they will grow thicker and heavier depending on what kind of plant we are growing. Once in every 3 years, the roots have to be cut, whereas for feeding the plant, we use exclusively natural fertilizers. The technique of bonsai is quite common in Japan, and this tradition continues centuries long. The first pictures of bonsai date from the 11th century. Some bonsai grown since the period Edo are alive even today, although 3 centuries have passed since then. Today in Japan there is a special state association for bonsai. We visited an exhibition of the Bonsai Club, Ueno, in Tokyo, where each member exhibits his own work. Bonsai has its own rules, said the chief master of bonsai in Japan, Mr. Saburo Kato, but we have eliminated them here in order to stress attention to the creativity of the authors, since the technique of creation of bonsai itself reveals the character and the personality of the creator of bonsai. We also create a group of cultivated trees and forests from nature. The goal of this association is to spread this Japanese art throughout the world, since bonsai does not recognize borders and is universal. At the exhibition, there were bonsais of different ages, some from 10 to 500 years old. Some of them were planted, while others were found in the dense woods of the Kuriil Islands, where due to the weather conditions, the growth of trees is very limited. Only a few steps further from the bonsai exhibition, we saw the market of these beautiful plants. There were all sorts of bonsai, different in age and appearance. And the prices? They range from 10 to 10,000 American dollars. All bonsai have one thing in common. There is no trunk where one can see intervention from human hands. Another aesthetic principle is the triangle of the universality, the creator and the plant. The Japanese tradition states that 3 values are required to create a bonsai: Shin, Zen-bi, or truth, goodness, and beauty. This aesthetic principle is also reflected in the art of arranging flowers. The Japanese call it ikebana, or in translation, flowers that live. The Japanese, however, adore another plant as well. That is the cherry blossom. April in Japan goes by in the token of an all-national holiday. Inseparable part of all this is drinking tea in nature. The tea in Japan is not an ordinary tea. Drinking tea has a significant meaning, and this ritual itself is a special cult. Today, as well as in ancient times, the ritual of drinking tea represents a most meaningful part of the tradition of this country. Another important segment of this nation where many aspects of the psychology of the people are implemented is the traditional Japanese food. Japan is famous not only by the quick trains, automobile industry, temples, shoguns, or samurais. An important part of the Japanese tradition is the culinary Japanese tradition. We are located at the Nadaman restaurant, the Royal Hotel in Osaka. Let's see what the hosts have prepared for us today. The main characteristic of traditional Japanese food is that it is exclusively natural. For example, seafood, vegetables, and of course rice is part of every dish from the Far East. Due to the Buddhist beliefs in Japan, meat and fat are very rarely consumed. Great importance is given to the selection of plates that are to be used for the meal, and they differ according to the season. Serving the meal is a significant moment. A meal is served in an impeccable way. Before each lunch or dinner, chef gives his last instructions to the waiting staff of the restaurant. Everything must be perfect because the tradition demands such a treatment.
Yes. So what are the basic ingredients of the Japanese cuisine?
Yes. 日本料理はですね、そういった山の
Japanese food has two main characteristics. There are fresh food that can be found in the mountains, fields, or in the sea, and food taken from nature in a certain season. In other words, we can use everything that is fresh, even for the soups. Spices and sauces for Japanese food differentiate from those of Western food. We use miso, which is made from the seeds of soybean. Actually, we use everything that is healthy.
調味料ですね。そういったものも、他の国とまた外国の料理とはまた違ったね、素材になるんじゃないでしょうか。お味噌ですとか、お醤油ですとか、お塩とか、そういった、自然の素材を、調味料ですね。調味料関係も使っているということが、大きな特徴じゃないでしょうかね。
How are the dishes composed in authentic Japanese cuisine?
So
Specialties like sukiyaki and shabu shabu are new dishes. A traditional Japanese meal consists of one kind of soup and three main dishes, and this has always been the main concept in our food. The dish that you have just seen and tasted is called teiseki. This style of food is served with sake, and one has to eat it slowly. Depending on the price and the type of food and the purpose of the meal, guests can be served with 25 or 29 different dishes. This illustrates the fact that the new trend is serving more dishes compared to the traditional trend.
目的によりましては、27歳とか29歳とかですね、だんだんそのお料理の構成もね、品数が多くなってくるということがございますね。はい。
How long does it take to become a professional chief?
日本では、コックさんのことを板前さんというふうに
The Japanese word for main chef is itamai. In this profession, as in all others, a lot of time is needed for someone to become an expert. Usually it takes up to 10 years. In the restaurant Nadaman, we have our own stuff. We send them on training courses and we call this career program. With these kind of training courses, the young chef after 3 to 5 years can achieve a higher level, while a complete professional level can be achieved in about 10 years' time.
5年経てばこういうふうな技術が習得できるよということにですね、キッチンスタッフのものに、段階を要するに教育スケジュールですね、そういったものを定めてなるべく10年よりも早くそこのお店のですね料理長になるようにプログラムを組んで育成をしているということですから、以前よりも多少は早くなったんじゃないかなと思いますね。
一応のでも目安は大体10年くらいはかかるというふうに、ご理解いただいたらいいんじゃないでしょうか。はい。
What is unique about Japanese cuisine as compared to other Oriental cuisine? What are its characteristics?
特に日本料理の場合は先ほども申しましたように
As I have already stated, Japanese food expresses the characteristics of the four seasons, but it reflects the visual aspect of the dishes as well. The idea is to create a unique platter with the spices and the dishes that we serve. Because of this, the Japanese tend to make their food appealing, and they incline to create harmony between the food itself and the plates used. Therefore,